The Goat House is back with a way too early 2026 NFL mock draft. Always fun to do these at this time of the year. Kind of a look ahead, who to expect in the next draft, who to watch in the upcoming college football season. It'll be a big question. Some of these guys, will they declare? Will they go back? But excited to break it down. Let's do it. So I went ahead and used Super Bowl odds to determine the draft order. So this video isn't about where teams are going to finish during the regular season. It's more about getting to know the potential prospects. So the Saints have the worst Super Bowl odds, so we put them in that one spot. Garrett Nussmeier, the pick, the LSU quarterback. Couple things here. Arch Manning I did not include because I think most likely he'll go back to school, but he could dominate this year, be the first overall pick, but he barely has any reps. Looks like a tough runner, really strong runner. Obviously, he's got an arm as well, but can make a lot of money going back to school and getting more prepared for the NFL. So I think his uncles will have a say. We'll see what he ends up deciding. I think a guy like Dante Moore, who's getting a lot of hype for Oregon this year, a guy that probably goes back but could declare and be a top pick. But right now, Nussmeier at the top. I think Nussmeier would have been the top pick in this past draft if he came out, but he could be special by going back, and that's what he did. He could step up a little bit, taking care of the football against the bigger defenses, the better defenses in the bigger games, but he really showed some good signs last year. The movement in the pocket is almost Joe Burrow-like. Is he going to be Joe Burrow with everything that all the traits that Joe Burrow has? No, not saying that, but it felt almost Burrow-like the way he maneuvered in the pocket. He's got a solid arm, makes some flash throws, and yeah, he was a little inconsistent why he went back to school, but you see a lot of upside with him. And it's funny, the Saints actually have Nussmeier's father on the staff, so if they had the first pick, that's something they would probably strongly consider. It would if some of these other top quarterbacks are in the class. It would be a tough call. But at the end of the day, no matter if guys like Manning declare or not, it's going to be a much stronger quarterback class. So Nussmeier at the top at this way too early stage. Second overall, Miami offensive tackle Francis Mauigoa, a legit offensive tackle prospect, potential elite prospect. And the tackle class at the top looks really good. I mean, this year was pretty good at the top. This class looks even better. A few guys that we'll talk about that could potentially go in the spot. But Mauigoa, I guess, would be comparable to Armand Membu in terms of right tackle. Big physical mauler of a dude, but can move out in space, and you really can make a highlight tape out of Mauigoa, what he's done so far. So I think he's a better prospect than Membu, but it's a guy that can go at the top. Again, former 5-star recruit, legit prospect here. And if the Giants are picking second, they did a really good job this year in the draft. They have a lot more of a complete roster, but they could be looking for that right tackle of the future. Of course, Marcus Bowe could play out there, or he can slide it inside. So it's more about kind of getting to know the prospects here, but he lands second overall. Third, the Browns go with another quarterback, Cade Klubnik, the quarterback from Clemson. And again, I mentioned with the first pick, maybe Manning more likely to go back, but we'll see. He's a guy to keep in mind. Maybe a guy like Dante Moore from Oregon, but Klubnik will have more quarterbacks in this mock. But Klubnik at the end of the the first thing with the Browns is maybe Flacco's not going to stick around. Maybe Pickett works out for them. Unlikely. Maybe Gabriel, maybe Shador works out for them. This upcoming class looks a lot better if they're still picking here. And they'll have 2 first-round picks. It's hard to imagine they pass on a quarterback. So Klubnik at the end of the year, down the stretch in the playoff game against Texas, he really got going, and that kind of looked like the Klubnik that we expected. He was a big, high-profile recruit, was supposed to be the next Trevor Lawrence, and we saw flashes, but we weren't fully getting that. But again, at the end, I'm sitting there going, man, if this guy's in the draft, all of a sudden he feels like a top pick. If he decides to declare, even though it wasn't even the case like a few weeks before saying that. So he has the ideal size. He's kind of sneaky athletic, got a good build to him, obviously, and a solid arm. He made more and more wild throws and maneuvered around pressure, to stand out more down the stretch in the big games of the season. So I was very much impressed. He feels like he could be a top pick, but again, if we factor in like Manning ends up being in here, does that push him down a spot? But without Manning, I look at Nussmeier and Klubnik as the top guys. But there's always somebody to break out. Remember, Cam Ward was supposed to be like a third-round pick, goes to Miami, ends up being the first overall pick. Remember Joe Burrow. Not that I expect anyone to do that, but was pretty good at LSU the next year. He was insane, absolutely insane. First overall pick, elite NFL quarterback. So there's always going to be the surprise guys, but we will have more quarterbacks throughout this mock. Another Clemson Tiger. They got some prospects. They got some legit prospects, so I'm excited about their team this year. Maybe they could kind of get back on track, and they made the playoff last year. They seem to always be a pretty good team, but maybe they get back on track to being one of those juggernaut Clemson Tiger teams. But Peter Woods, defensive tackle, that actually, he's well over 300 pounds, and Clemson used him all over the place. They put him off the edge at times, and he disrupts no matter where he is. But even if he ends up being versatile this year, he's going to be a top pick. But if you put him in the right alignment, which is inside, I mean, he shows that he is a star. So this feels like a legit top pick. Of course, the Jets could be on a quarterback as well. Justin Fields, I'm not super confident about him being the franchise quarterback, but we got to see him in there first. And it was only a 2-year deal, so it'll be a 1-year deal by this. If we fast forward to the 2026 NFL draft. So Peter Woods from Clemson, one of 2 Clemson defensive linemen to watch out for this upcoming year. Back-to-back years with an elite running back prospect. Jeremiyah Love from Notre Dame lands with the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans did a pretty good job kind of filling out their roster, starting with Cam Ward with the first pick. They might be in need of a full-time running back or the running back of the team going forward after this year to kind of take over for Tony Pollard. We'll see. But Jeremiyah Love, I mean, definitely different than Ashton Jeanty. Jeanty is a little more built. He's a little more physical, has crazy contact balance. But you do see Love thrive in that area as well. You saw him against Penn State, what he did in that playoff game, and that was on a bad knee as well, so he has that power. But where he is better than Jeanty is the freak athleticism, the home run ability. He will burn by everybody. He can jump over people. You see him hurdling people all year long, even on a bad knee. What he was able to do on that knee at the end was pretty ridiculous. The home run, outrunning, defenders type plays, the 98-yard touchdown against Indiana, hurdling defenders, and again, that Penn State run as well. And he doesn't have nearly as much mileage as Ashton Jeanty. He kind of, in a way, splits carries, which actually was from his request to maybe save that mileage for the NFL. So just all about staying healthy, because again, he got a little banged up at the end of the year, but this is a freaky explosive running back. Almost kind of gives you Saquon Barkley vibes, but isn't as built as Saquon Barkley, but still very, very young. So this is a top-tier prospects, and I heard of scouts being at Notre Dame games like right away early in the year saying they are there to watch Jeremiyah Love, and he was a backup the previous year, so they already knew about how good this kid actually was. So another top-tier running back prospect on the way next year as long as he stays healthy. He comes in at the 5th overall pick here. Another offensive tackle, there's some legit ones at the top. This feels like a top-tier offensive tackle class at the the top of the draft. Cade Proctor was another former big-time recruit from Iowa. At Alabama, obviously the left tackle is massive. He is physical, and I think he takes that next step this year. The Raiders could end up using a tackle. Colton Miller needs an extension. They haven't talked about it yet, but it's still early. They can end up giving it to him. But then they still, there was talk about them taking a tackle with the 6th pick this year, and that didn't happen. And they did grab a couple offensive linemen, developmental type guys, but they can end up taking one next year, possibly here. But here's a big time one that everyone's had on their radar for a bit. Proctor from Alabama. Panthers at 7. Caleb Downs, the star elite safety prospect from Ohio State, was with Bama the previous year. But this guy's great up in the box, getting downhill, diagnosing plays. He's good in the slot. He's good in the back end, being a playmaker as a free safety. He could do it all. And it just feels like a really good pairing if the Panthers are picking up here again. We're going with current Super Bowl odds, but really good pairing with Trayvon Merrick, who's kind of a do-it-all safety as well, but I like him a little bit better in the box. And they actually just drafted Lathan Ransom from Ohio State, who's going to be a rundown, downhill tackling safety, box type guy. So it'd be a good mixture having all those guys together. But Downs is a star no matter where you put him. He elevated the Ohio State Buckeyes defense. It just feels like an elite defensive back prospect here in the upcoming draft. Another offensive tackle prospect, another Browns pick. Remember, the Browns have the Jags pick, so 2 in the top 10 according to Super Bowl odds order here. But Spencer Fano from Utah. This guy legit could go in the second, we had the second overall pick. I mean, these tackles at the top are ridiculous. He is very quick, got the length as well. You turn on the tape, and the second you start watching this guy, he really, really stands out. So this is a fun one here. It's going to be a fun offensive tackle class with the Browns, and he played right tackle for the Utes, so he can plug in for the future at right tackle for the Browns. They could be looking for left as well. So some offensive tackles to really keep an eye on. We're not done, but these are the top, like these three guys we just talked about may be elite prospects, and why this position group looks insane. We'll see if it pans out that way. You know, things could change, but it looks insane. But the Browns, in this case, pick up a quarterback and an offensive tackle. 9, we gave the Colts a linebacker, Anthony Hill Jr., middle linebacker from Texas, but a do-it-all middle linebacker. I mean, the guy is very athletic, really good in run support, can cover, and can blitz. They get like 8 sacks last year, so the dude is all over the place. Texas has some linebackers this next year. They got a lot of players, actually, and they do a really good job recruiting. So Colts, I don't know if they'll be picking this early. I think the Colts could be sneaky good this year. But according to the Super Bowl odds, they don't have the best odds, but they don't have too many needs here. A linebacker is kind of the one that stands out, and there's a legit prospect that seems to be worthy of the pick around this range at this too early stage. Another Clemson Tiger, T.J. Parker, the edge rusher from Clemson, was super productive this past year. Feels like easily a top 10 pick, so I had to get him off the board here. And the Seahawks could be in need of a pass rusher if we fast forward. DeMarcus Lawrence, not the long-term answer. Nwosu keeps getting injured. They have a lot of guys that can play. Mafe, Hall. There's a lot of guys that could play there, but they could be looking to get better if we fast forward to a year. And this is a prospect that could be a top pick after his monster season in 2024. So the Rams are actually going to have 2 first-round picks. Remember, one from the Atlanta Falcons, which will it be this early? We'll see. You could argue probably not. But in this case, all right, Drew Allar. I actually think he's a little overhyped, and I was not impressed. There was people during the year, down the stretch of the year, the Oregon Big Ten championship game going, Allar, if he was in the draft, he could be the first pick. And I was like, I have not seen that. A little overhyped. He definitely has the prototypical size. He has the makings of a really good quarterback. But right now, like if he was in this past draft, I probably would have graded him as a early 3rd round pick, and that's just for upside. But he went back, smart move. He could definitely improve. I expect him to improve, but again, he still has some work to do. He didn't distribute the ball to receivers too well. Yes, Penn State's receivers weren't that great, but it's just a lot of schemed up plays. The running back feeding the running backs. Schemed up plays to Tyler Warren. So he's got to expand a little bit. He's got to be a little better under pressure, but he has the makings, the build, the arm talent of a solid quarterback. So I think this is a good spot. I think if the Rams have 2 first-round picks next year, and they kind of had that in mind, too, when they traded with the Falcons. Like, we can't pass this up. We might need to draft a quarterback next year, for the future. And next year, meaning the one we're talking about right now, that draft class, quarterback class, is going to be a lot better, right? So they take a shot on Allar. He sits behind Stafford, learns from him, and that would be the ideal situation for him and possibly the Rams. But again, if we add a guy like Manning to this mock, it pushes him down likely even further. But right now, banking on upside here, and then sitting right away, Allar 11th to the Rams. 12, the Patriots go, and another offensive tackle here, Isaiah World from Oregon. He actually hasn't played for Oregon yet. He's a transfer from Nevada. There is a lot of buzz, a lot of hype about him, not just replacing Josh Connerly, who just got drafted in the first round, but possibly being better than him. There's that much hype. It kind of, and he has some traits that you look for. He could get a little stronger, but it kind of gives me the vibes of Josh Simmons transferring from San Diego State over to Ohio State, who's just a first-round pick to the Chiefs, obviously. So that's another offensive tackle to watch for here. And the Patriots did just draft Will Campbell, early in the first round, obviously, but they could be looking for the right tackle of the future, as Morgan Moses won't last, super long, obviously, and that's who they just picked up in free agency. So kind of looking out for the tackle of the future here for New England. Dolphins at 13, Jermod McCoy. Yeah, they're still going to trade Jalen Ramsey, it feels, and they're probably going to need a corner, next year as well. So they take McCoy, the Tennessee corner, who just seems to always be making a play on the ball, whether it's just getting downhill, showing his athleticism, his playmaking ability to get his hands on the ball, whether it's an interception or a pass deflection. So he really stood out this past year and could be a corner to watch for the next draft. He goes to Miami 13. A receiver at 14. We talked about how elite the tackle class might be. Receiver class might be the opposite. It doesn't look super strong right now. There's a lot of transfer guys to watch for as well. Maybe it ends up being better than expected, but Carnell Tate from Ohio State could be that guy. Ohio State's always got receivers stepping up and becoming a first-round pick, and he was pretty productive, given that he was behind some guys, or I guess overshadowed by some other guys like Jeremiah Smith, who's still there, and Emeka Egbuka, who just went in the first round of the Buccaneers. So Tate's a guy to watch this year. Ohio State always has guys stepping up, so that would be the Cowboys. Still badly need a receiver. Surprisingly, didn't take one, so they could be looking for one in the first round next year. And Tate could be that guy that's first off the board in the next draft. Another offensive tackle, the Cardinals really stacked up their defense in the draft, this 2025 draft, early, but they still need offensive line help, and Jonah Williams is going to be there for one more year, so they could use a right tackle. So how about Notre Dame's right tackle, Emil Wagner, who got better and better as the year went on. I thought he played a hell of a game in the national championship. You go turn on that tape, I thought he dominated Jack Sawyer in that game, so that's one to watch. Notre Dame always has offensive line. That was like the youngest I remember their entire unit being last year, too, so these guys are going to continue to get better and better, and the Cardinals could be looking out for one of these tackles specifically to play right tackle of the future here next year. Another quarterback, this one coming off the board to the Steelers at pick 16. I think it's pretty likely the Steelers will need a quarterback next year. LaNorris from South Carolina, maybe being a little overhyped right now in terms of the draft world. Some people putting him at the top, but he could get there. He's got a sturdy build to him. Right now, it feels like he's a little bit better of a runner than he is a thrower. But I love that he wants to be a pass-first guy, and he does. He has some flashes. He has some arm talent. He still needs to fully put it together. He reminds me of Anthony Richardson right now, but there's going to be a lot more reps for him. Remember, Richardson, we didn't see enough from him, especially as a passer. I think Sellers will be further along. It just feels like a guy that the Steelers are kind of looking for with their type of offense. Get a guy that's a little bit of a dual threat, mobile guy. So he could end up taking off this year as a passer and being a top 5 pick, or he kind of can stay the same and be more known as just a sturdy runner, athletic and physical. And then that's really not going to help his draft stock a ton if he kind of stays as that. But again, he had some flashes slinging the football. It feels like a guy the Steelers would like. Of course, they're better prospects as of today. They could move up and get one. We'll see, but it should be a fun quarterback class. And I didn't even include the guys that might declare, but I'm thinking they won't. So it could be a stacked quarterback class. 17, Mateo Uiagalelei, Oregon star pass rusher, was super productive this year, and it felt like whenever I was watching, it felt like he showed up in these big moments. Like if Oregon needed a big play on third down or maybe even fourth down, it felt like he was the guy that made the play or some way involved creating for his teammates. So getting that pressure, getting that sack, getting his hands on the ball. So the Bears could be looking to upgrade defensive line by this time next year if they're picking around this range. So they go with the Oregon star rusher. Back-to-back Oregon Ducks, the tight end Kenyon Sadiq to the Denver Broncos. And the Broncos tried to trade up for Colson Loveland. They wanted that tight end of the future, so they could be looking for one at this time next year in the 2026 draft. So they take the Oregon super explosive athletic tight end that's going to take another step up this year because Terrence Ferguson's gone, but they both kind of played. And Oregon Insider of the Goat House says that Sadiq was the better of the two tight ends, and Ferguson just went in the second round, right? So that's kind of high praise there. And they're a little different styles, but that's a tight end to watch out for. Tight end class doesn't seem as strong right now, but that's one of those position groups where it kind of takes off the year. I think we got to see this upcoming year, and I think we'll be a little bit higher on it. 19, Buccaneers, Danny Dennis Sutton, the Penn State pass rusher, was the duo with Abdul Carter. And he was already productive. He's going to take off even more. Those Penn State edge rushers do. I thought about mocking him even earlier. That's definitely a possibility. He could be a top pick. This is kind of the range of Abdul Carter last year as well. And so, again, another Penn State pass rusher. We had Chop Robinson the year before, went in the middle of the first round. Sutton could take that next step during the year, and it's Buccaneers probably looking for a pass rusher once again. They kind of focused on, well, they surprisingly took Ibuka first this year. They kind of focused on DBs, even though they did end up adding an edge rusher, a couple edge rushers, depending on where Roberts will play. But it's something that this team will target next year. Again, Hassan Reddick's not going to be around forever, so that'd be a really good fit there. But Dennis Sutton's a guy that could really rise up the boards as the year goes on. 20, another offensive tackle, Austin Barber from Florida. Really long but athletic offensive tackle. And the Texans, they tried to get more of a bigger impact, a bigger prospect this year. It didn't really work out for them. They were trying to maneuver around the first round of the draft. Tried to trade back in and get a Connerly. So that didn't work out for them. So they could be looking to get one at this time next year. They got a couple rentals, like one-year deals with Cam Robinson and Trent Brown. So, yeah, again, this is something very realistically they could be targeting next year in the draft. Vikings take Oregon safety Dylan Thieneman, who didn't play for the Ducks yet. He's a transfer from Purdue. He was the only thing Purdue had going for them last year. That was maybe the worst Power 4 team I watched play last year. But, yeah, Thieneman, kind of a do-it-all safety. This made a lot of sense because Harrison Smith's got to be retiring, right? You thought maybe this year, but he's back for one more year, going to be retiring. So it's kind of lined up perfectly for the Vikings here to try to replace, their longtime great Harrison Smith. And this seems like a guy that could be the man for the job. I'm excited to watch him on a better team, much better defense this year with the Oregon Ducks. Chargers 22 go with Auburn defensive lineman Keldrick Falk. He kind of gives you a little bit of tweener vibes. Like, is he more of an edge at the next level? Is he more of a defensive tackle? But I think all of the above. He's just that explosive. He's that much of a presence disruptor. So kind of gives you old school defensive end vibes in terms of, how physical he is, but a little bit of new school in there as well. So I'm excited to watch him this year, and the Chargers could be looking for kind of that pass rusher of the future. Could also use interior guys as well. So kind of gives you a little bit of everything here, the Auburn prospect. The Niners, they kind of focused on defensive line. They really upped their defensive line in the 2025 draft. So they're going to need some offensive line help. So Cade Casey, who is a really good run-blocking tackle and a solid pass protector as well, could take a step up this year. The Niners will be very interested in him, kind of their style, like really good run blocker. Paved the way for Ashton Jeanty. Well, Jeanty kind of does it himself either way, but really stood out this year. So Niners grab Casey at 23. 24, Bengals go to corner here. Avion Terrell from Clemson. That is A.J. Terrell's brother. Same school, same position, kind of gives you some similar vibes, really smooth mover. He stood out to me right away. I want to say it was week 1, even though Clemson got their ass kicked. I'm like, this it reminds me of A.J. Terrell. Like, it's another one of him out there. So expect him to kind of take off even more this year. And the Bengals kind of focus on their D-line early this year and linebacker throughout the rest of the draft, so they could be looking for DBs at this time next year. So I went with Terrell, 24 to Cincinnati. Packers at 25. Reuben Bain Jr., the Miami edge rusher, was instantly an impact as a freshman 2 years ago. Very, very productive. Was solid this year as well, but wants to get back on track in terms of that production. The Packers could be looking for a starting pass rusher at this time next year. So I went with Bain, who potentially can go a lot earlier, but went with him to the Packers at 25. A very interesting prospect here, LSU's linebacker Harold Perkins Jr. tore his ACL last year, and before last year, he was expected to be like a top-tier pick once he's finally able to declare. But so he's coming off that knee injury, but this dude is a freaky, versatile linebacker. He's an off-ball linebacker, but when he rushes off the edge, it almost feels like that is where his upside is at the next level. So it could be this year's, just like this draft class had Jalen Walker and Jahad Campbell. We had Micah Parsons in the past. It could be that type of prospect where he's used at both. But man, that upside is off the edge as long as he's healthy. How is he after the knee? But it just feels like a Dan Quinn guy here. He can get the most out of him again, maybe playing off the edge. And they badly need edge rush help. They didn't draft. I love their draft class, but they didn't draft an edge rusher. But that could be what they're in the market for. Very likely they could be in the market for, a guy that's pretty versatile on top of it here at pick 26. Pick 27, the Rams will have 2 first-round picks because, remember, they got the Falcons pick, so this is probably their own. I think the Rams will be very good this year. Only 2 receivers coming off the board in this mock. It feels like a weaker class, but Jordan Tyson from Arizona State looks legit. I like the size, separation, quickness, athleticism, the combination of all that was very productive this year. And that was kind of a scatteroo team first, like a run team first, it felt like. So for him to be that productive. Levitt, their quarterback, looks pretty solid. I think people were overhyping him a little bit. He's the guy that can end up going back as well. More of a runner than a thrower right now, but we didn't include him in this mock, but he has some upside. But the Rams only gave 2-year deal to Devontae Adams. That kind of makes sense. So fast forward, hopefully Nakua's still healthy. Adams only on 1-year deal. They could be looking for another receiver because receiver is a very, very important position. Having several of them in that McVay offense because they'll dish out a lot of snaps every single game to the position. So I thought Jordan Tyson, who feels like a first-round receiver in a weaker class here, made sense at 27 to LA. 28, the Lions go with a defensive lineman, more of an edge rusher, but in a defensive tackle's body. But for his physicality, his size, he moves so well. So he needs to up the production. He needs to stay a little more consistent because he has games where you're blown away like this. I feel like people have been talking about this guy for a bit now because those flashes, and you can see it. So this could end up being maybe the Shamar, I don't think he's as athletic, but Shamar Stewart of this year, where a little production, maybe he can have it this year, but it's just an NFL traits guy with so much upside. And the Lions, surprisingly, didn't take an edge rusher until the 6th round this year, so they could be in the market for one this next year. And it's a physical defensive end that also can play inside. It just seems like a type of guy they would definitely like here. So one to watch to see if he can up his game, up that production, so he cannot be in the Shamar, and I love Shamar Stewart, but he cannot be in the Shamar Stewart conversation type. And again, I don't think he's as athletic, but he moves pretty well for his size. But if he ups that production, he could be a top 10 pick. So definitely a big one to keep your eye on this year. What a safety for the Chiefs here. Just lost Justin Reed this offseason, but they have some replacements. Could be looking for a guy in the future. Don Schuler, how about another potential Notre Dame star safety? Had Xavier Watts, who Schuler played with. Watts just went to the Falcons. Kyle Hamilton a few years ago. Schuler really impressed me this year. Formerly was recruited by big schools like Bama, Georgia, some other top ones. And yeah, he impressed this year. Explosive athlete, well put together. Maybe a little on the lighter side. Remind me of Makuba a little bit, but going to be a little bigger than him. Always around the ball, getting downhill, flying across the field, getting his hands on the ball, ability to take it back. So that's another Notre Dame safety to watch this upcoming year. Another LSU linebacker, Bills go at Whit Weeks, who was awesome last year, always around the football, always involved, making tackles. He felt like his play really was what mainly elevated the LSU defense because it was horrendous the year before. So there might be flashier, maybe better prospects, bigger names, but I felt like his play just really was what was most important to that LSU defense, and he can blitz as well. And the Bills obviously just gave Bernard a big contract, but Matt Milano, this could be it for him. He's got to stay healthy this year, has been unable to do that. Really good linebacker, but he might not, maybe won't be that long-term answer. So this just feels like a Bills linebacker that they would really like to potentially replace Milano. I actually like that fit at this way, way too early stage, but him at 30. 31, a little bit of a different one, a unique one here with Nicholas Singleton, the Penn State running back, going to the Ravens. The Ravens have Derrick Henry. This might be the last run for him. I mean, he looks like he can play forever, but one more year left on his deal, and they could be looking for another running back. Now, the flaw in this is Singleton is nowhere near the style of running back that Derrick Henry is, but I don't know if the Ravens need a specific type. They just want a ball player, and Singleton, he can fly. He's quick. He's got great vision. But I thought as the year went on, he showed a little bit more ability to slip tackles, break tackles. Saw a little bit of stiff arm in there. So this, Jeremiyah Love is far and away the guy as long as he's healthy. But it seems like a pretty good running back class again. And to me right now, this could be that next guy. And Allen, his teammate, is another one. I like Jonah Coleman from Washington. He really stood out. Oregon got a Tulane transfer that looks pretty good. There's a number of running backs to watch for, but Singleton to the Ravens could be a very intriguing one. 32, the Eagles go with the Texas corner Malik Muhammad, pair him up with Andrew Makuba, who they just drafted from Texas. But yeah, Muhammad really stood out last year. Texas has got a bunch of ball players, especially on defense, and they're prepared for the NFL because they it's not just a basic man coverage college ball defense. They run a lot of zone coverage, and these guys, if they show out, they're ready for the NFL. So Eagles could use a corner by this time next year. So yeah, just kind of a video to get to know the prospects at this very, very early stage. It's always fun to do, and it's going to be interesting next year to see who pans out, but who declares, who goes back to school here. So we'd love to see some discussions in the comments. I don't want to hear anything about the order, because that's really not what you clicked on this video for, and we just use Super Bowl odds. So there you have it. Let me know your thoughts. Check out all of our recap, grading videos, all that. A lot more content, off-season content coming your way. Like, subscribe, turn notifications on. It's going to do it. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.